So here I got the 5-minute candle 5-day chart to get a general feel of why we're talking about this one. It's BIMI. So it's a Chinese medical play. And as we see, it was riding around 285 support. Steep dip down to this level for a little bit, 270-ish. And then ultimately dumped all the way to around, bounced off 2 very briefly. And it since has been contained to around 230 and the 220 resistance levels and held around the 210 support. So let's talk about pretty much, I want to do a real detailed overview over this company and the price action as well as the fundamentals. So it all started with the earnings got leaked. So I actually saw it on the social media that someone, when it had dropped from 3 to 270 before the earnings came, people were saying that bad earnings were leaked. And sure enough, it was the case. They came out and they pretty much said, hey, we made $426 grand for the first 3 months that ended in March 31st. So that was a big disappointment. So it caused the company to, drop nearly almost 50%, right? So I like panics. So I looked real deeply into this, and it's kind of interesting because, as you can know, there was no revenue in the previous year. But it's also worth noting, we got to be honest. Look at this; they're still losing 2.2 million, which is confusing. And it's all pretty much right here from this 1.6 million in general and administration expenses. Previously it was 122 grand, and all of a sudden it is 1.6 million for these 3 months. So they paid a lot of money for this revenue, so that's not encouraging. But and also it's worth noting, very little cash. Last year they had 36. This year they have 175, and they're losing all that money, so that's not good. On a positive note, as of June 26th, they have 10.3 million shares, so it's a relatively low float. This thing can move fast in both directions, right? So it's also worth noting, it said on June 4th, they announced that they had announced the sale. They closed the sale of a previous announced sale. And if you look deeper into it, it says 2.84 per share, right? That's what they paid. So then you look at this chart, look at it right here at 2.84. So it's almost like as soon as it went under, it was like broke that price that those things are paid for, those warrants. It's just a quick sell-off, right? So that's what pretty much we're going on the price action. So let's go back on a 14-day just to get a better feel. So yeah, it was right in this 280-ish, 285, 285 all the way to about 290 support. And it got real heavy around $3, $3.10, and $3.20, right? And it's worth noting, on what's the 18th? That's right over here. It's over here, and they're trying to pump it up. I remember seeing a lot of people pumping this 3+, trying to push it up. 320 comes right back down, and that's when it first caught my attention. And it's worth noting, if you look on here, I'm saying, look at the revenue here. Do not fall in love. It was $3.24, so here it's $2. A couple weeks later, 35%. So I warned you guys, you gotta look. You don't want to hold these penny stocks into earnings. You're praying that it's done a turnaround all of a sudden. But let's talk about why it's had momentum heading into these earnings, because this is what also caught my eyes and why I have bought it over it this weekend. I am swinging it at a 212 level. So here we go. It's right around that 210 support I'm hoping it doesn't break. If it does, I'll cut my loss around 207, 208, and I'll look to load at 2. Right? But let's look into why. So the earnings were bad. So this is with the news right here, the press release. Someone saw it beforehand and caused the drop, right? Or maybe people just were scared to hold into earnings, right? Probably smart to sell it at 270. I had bought the dip at 270 and was scalping it up and down on the way up as it was bouncing. And then finally, I saw the earnings and instantly I sold. I took a couple cent loss, because there's no point of waiting and praying that people don't react to these earnings. I mean, which just sound bad. 426 grand. That sounds horrible. So we already talked about that. So this is what's interesting. On March 5th, the company entered into a purchase agreement to sell a million surgical masks and 100,000 bottles of rubbing alcohol, right? And it says the first batch of 10,000 surgical masks and 1,000 bottles of rubbing alcohol is expected to be delivered on or before March 15th. So are these sales going to carry over to the next quarterly reports? And are they going to get a lot? It's going to be a big improvement. That's what you could speculate. Even though it's hard to say, you're going to hold this into the next earnings. But I think a lot of people are going to look into this and think the same thing. Because look at that. That's a pretty big order. I mean, that you'd think that'd be almost as much. That'd be over 400,000. But I don't know. But this is where it got more interesting as I looked. On March 20th, Seeking Alpha puts out this thing about international. They announced a $19 million medical device purchase agreement. So it says a subsidiary, which we could go over later, has entered into a $19 million medical device purchase agreement. And it says it's for 90,000 medical isolation gowns, 100,000 coveralls, and 18 CT machines, and 500 ventilators, right? As well as some other stuff. And it made BIMI go up 20% in that pre-market. So as we see, that's March 20th, which would also be past that first quarterly earnings. So is that another huge contract that's going to carry over to the next earnings? Very possible. So those are the two positives. We went over the negatives, and those are the two positives. I just bought it off a price action point. I see it bouncing. If I get it at 212 is all I need. My first price target will be 220. I mean, if it breaks 220, I'll put a stop loss at 220. I'm not going to let it go underneath that on me. It's not much money. But ideally, I'll be going for the 230, right? And that's my real first target. Looking for that 230. Beyond 230, there's going to be a little bit at 242. And we'll have to go and look at the daily chart on the year. So 242, we're going to see that. There's going to be resistance here. So my price target is going to be 220, 230, 242, 250. Then it's going to be 275, 285. Let's go over 275s right here. 285. $3, which is going to be the really heavy point. 310. $320 and $330. So those are going to be my price targets. My support level is going to be that 210. If that breaks, I'm looking for the 2 load. If that breaks, I'm looking for a load at 185. And that's based off this right here. Underneath that, I'm looking for the 170 based off this. Then below that, I'm looking for the 150 for the psychological barrier. My price targets are based off resistance levels on a various amount of time frames that I've already looked at. So I repeat: 220, 230, 245, no, 242, 250, 275, 285, 310, 320, 330. All points that will be a little heavy, and I'd put a stop loss at, and I'd make sure it would hold those levels. And if it don't, I'd look to reload it, the one below it. And if it gets in the channel, I'm looking to scalp from one to the next. And that's how I'm going to play these. So that's about it for this one. Beyond 330, I'm not going to, if it, say we got some news or some crazy momentum, you can see there's going to be a little bit at 365. So beyond the 330, I'd take profits at 350, obviously, and then the 365. And then from there, $4 maybe. It might be pretty light till $4. 375 probably before that. So I'd take 365, 375, and then I'll be looking for the 4. But let's not get too ahead of ourselves. It's only at $2 right now. And let's look at the 90 to get a little bit better feel. So this is where I'm getting that 242 resistance. 250 is just a psychological level that you always want to watch for. 275 right here. So you see it right here and right here. 285. That's over from this one. And then 3 is going to be on the psychological number, and a little bit of resistance from here and here. 310 being the 200 SMA and these resistance levels. And 320 being, I got 320 on another time frame. So that's it for this.